What is the significance of the deer in Get Out? It's a question I'm sure many of you have been wondering, but for some quick context, let me provide you with a plot recap. The film Get Out, written and directed by Jordan Peele. Yeah, that Jordan Peele.
As long as you're not looking at women who... Not women? Wow! Okay!
Served as Peele's entry into the world of film, and better yet, through the genre of psychological horror. Something you may not expect based on its past resume. It was initially released for the Sundance Film Festival, which was followed by its Hollywood debut only a month later, courtesy of none other than Blumhouse Productions. The same Blumhouse Productions who helped to produce the films on screen.
Time! Say it louder! I'm upset!
Other influences on Get Out's visual style and cinematography can be seen through the likes of Toby Oliver and Gregory Plotkin respectively. The narrative of Get Out follows the unfolding events of a black man being introduced to his white girl's family. However, something is off about their home, and as the slow descent into psychological horror unfolds, the purpose behind Chris's presence there is discovered. Put simply, our protagonist, played by BAFTA Award winner Daniel Kaluuya, is one of the many black victims to the mental hijacking and mental imprisonment of the Armitages experiments. The Armitages, alongside Chris's girlfriend Rose, played by the wonderful Alison Williams, target black men for their
stronger, faster, cooler.
Black is in fashion.
and bid them off to be taken over by a white person. Effectively, these people are being reduced to nothing but a passenger in their own body, forever being subjected by the isolated, cold, sunken place. Now, with the much needed context out the way, we can return to the original question. What is the significance of the deer in the story? Initially, and on a surface level perspective, the deer may seemingly have no real purpose, or its only purpose is to highlight Chris's empathy towards life and pain, shown through both how the shot is framed and how it's edited. However, this scene has more political, racial, and interpersonal symbolism than what meets the eye. As such, I aim to talk about 3 differing topics in this video. First off, I want to specify what exactly the deer means in the story, and how it ties into the other main topics. Secondly, the racial and political motifs that the deer provides will be explored in relation to the film and real-world events. And finally, how the deer speaks to the interpersonal relationships that Chris holds around him, and how it speaks to his character arc in the film. Throughout these 3 points of analysis, the use of media conventions and techniques will be explored in how it enhances the motifs and the meanings the deer conveys. And don't worry, if you're uninterested in some of these topics, you can follow the timestamps on screen or in the description to skip to the content you wish to hear. Now, finally, with the setup out of the way, let's discuss Section 1. The deer, put simply in this film, represents Chris's inaction and paralysis when faced with traumatic experiences. It represents how quickly one's agency can be taken from oneself, and Chris's primary fears in the narrative. The phrase, "a deer in headlights," is symbolic of the paralysis or the freeze response in relation to a stressor that Chris shares throughout the events of the film, which will be explored more thoroughly later on in the video, along with other themes the deer brings up. Essentially, for this video, we will be looking at the deer and Chris as one of the same, as the comparisons that can be made between them are so strong that they might as well be the same entity. More specifically, next we will cover the racial comparisons that can be made between both Chris and the deer in the film. When the deer is first presented to us during Act 1, or the rising action of the story, it's displayed with a high-angle shot, emphasising its state as a lifeless roadkill, both unprotected and vulnerable to the situation it finds itself in. Immediately, this serves to mirror the
African-American experience
that can be seen in our real world. As such, the deer also serves to mirror Chris's later state in the film, hunted, powerless, and reduced to nothing but a trophy for the white people around him, which is exemplified by the mounted buckhead looming over Chris in Act 3, a trophy of a hunt, just like Chris. The placement or mise-en-scene of the mounted head in this scene is no mistake either. In fact, it is deliberately placed here in a moment where Chris is restrained and unable to move or free himself. Also, I find it worth noting that the term buck used by characters such as Dean Armitage is a term that's been used throughout history to dehumanize black men, again, particularly during the slave trade. What I find more intriguing is the lack of action surrounding Chris plays into the idea of him needing to fulfill his role as prey, as someone who cannot act against a system or predators that harm him. Finally, during the primary climax of the film, in his pursuit of revenge, Chris's weapon of choice for his freedom falls to the mounted buck. The framing of this scene, that being of a low angle and how much bigger Chris is compared to the buck, highlights his detachment from the vulnerable deer in headlights motif of the deer. He takes back his freedom and shifts his narrative place from prey to predator. The emotional link between the deer and Chris serves primarily as a narrative parallel in the death of Chris's mother. He describes her death as,
Where was your mom?
She wasn't home.
From work. What did you do?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I just sat there.
You didn't call anyone?
No,
How do you feel now?
I can't move.
You're paralyzed. Just like that day when you did nothing. You did nothing.
in the same way he felt helpless and did nothing for his mother, he cannot find it within himself to help or act in the interest of the dying deer in Act 1. The use of a mid-shot and close-up shots in this scene visually conveys uncertainty or fear in what the deer reminds him of. The two shot types serve to represent Chris having a double take of the situation, which exemplifies how his inconsistency can harbour dire consequences later down the line. This inaction and passive response to the pain surrounding him, along with his freezing response to a stressor, highlight how this core element of Chris's character stems from that one night. The night where he did nothing. The diegetic sound of the deer and the POV shot leading up to the corpse's reveal enhances the emotional resonance of the scene, immersing the audience in Chris's inner turmoil, one he shared on the night of his mother's death. Another personal link that connects one of Chris's relationships and the deer can be seen through Rose. In this case, instead of highlighting Chris's passive nature, the deer serves as foreshadowing to the true nature of Rose, and her later betrayal around the confrontation in Act 2. Rose's indifference towards the deer from the start of the film later parallels her indifference to Chris's fate during the third act. Her dismissal of both the deer and Chris's pain highlights how her perspective on pain is nothing short than a minor inconvenience. This results in the deer being used as a warning for Chris, and a warning on Rose's true role in the story. Now, with our analysis officially ending, it's time to wrap up this video. What is the significance of the deer in Get Out? Well, by now I'm sure hoping that you know what it is. The deer and buck motifs throughout the film enrich the story both in its racial parallels and foreshadowing for future conflict. Overall, it defines our protagonist through both his initial fears and later triumphs, and serves as the definitive marker in how Chris develops within Get Out. Just like last time, thank you for watching the video. Whether it was just a minute of your time, or maybe longer, your support is invaluable. And as always, if you disliked the video, make sure to smash that like button anyway. I'll see you later.